and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold, silver, and crypto stories for the weekend of July 22nd, 2018. We did not do last week's top gold and silver and crypto stories for the weekend of July 15th, 2018. So this is a two-week makeup. We're going to get a different perspective. We haven't done a two-week wrap-up before. We've usually done the 1 week. Well, have gold, silver, and cryptos bottomed? The impact of tariffs, Chinese debt issues, and political turmoils may signal the low for precious metals and cryptos. Also, Trump openly warns the Fed not to raise rates and expresses deep concern that all of the work that has been done on the economy can be undone by further rate hikes. Podesta may be given immunity in the Paul Manafort case. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page both testified before Congress, and the Litecoin Foundation and Binance and the country of Malta are in talks to open their own banks. Russians indicted for hacking in the 2016 election, and South Korea recognizes crypto exchanges as regulated banks. Gold hit a low of $12.12 just a few days ago per ounce, and silver a low of $15.28, while Bitcoin rose over the last 6 or 7 days, up about $1,000, taking the entire space back up with it. Let's take a look at some of these stories and how they may affect the gold, silver, and crypto prices going forward. We just scrolled by those Smaulgld mugs. I shouldn't have done that. Well, there you go. There is your Smaulgld Super Classic mug, now available on the Smaulgld site or at the links below. $23.99 with free shipping. And you can also purchase the Smaulgld Classic mug. So the Super Classic mug is $23.99, and the Smaulgld Classic mug that you're looking at right now on your screen is $19.99, and it does help out the site. All right, let's take a look now at some of the stories we covered. Now, Smaulgld has been doing live streams every night at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, so be sure to check that out. I've included all of the links to the videos you may have missed. So starting back from 2 weeks ago, there's one here, do you believe what's true, or do you believe what you want to believe? Then we did one on what's up with soaring silver demand, what's up with India's soaring silver demand, and their solar demand. And then we have charts here. We went through the charts for the year, for the months of Indian silver imports, and we showed that they are on record pace. This story got picked up a lot on other people's channels, including SRS Rocco, was in TF Metals report, and also on Silver Doctors. Why are the Litecoin Foundation and TokenPay buying a bank? Are gold miners going bankrupt? We did a full analysis of what's going on with the gold mining situation. Why are central banks buying gold? We went through which central banks are buying, why they're buying, and where they're buying it from. Are gold miners all-in sustaining cost a reliable measure? We discussed that. U.S. was rated the most favorable country for ICOs. And we went through the significant differences between gold and silver. Also, we mentioned at the top of the broadcast that Bitcoin had risen $1,000 over the past few days, and we covered why they soared, particularly on the given day that it happened a few days ago. Gold and silver prices were crushed, but we're seeing the mint sales pick up. Another reason why we might be seeing a bottom. The lower prices are attracting increased demand. And where were you on July 16th, 2018? That is referring to the day of the Trump-Putin summit, was supposedly the equivalent of 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. Russia's gold reserves climbed another 500,000 ounces. We covered the most recent report from the Central Bank of the Federation of Russia, which shows that they added another 500,000 ounces of gold to reserves. Then we also covered that Russia did not sell U.S. treasuries to buy gold. In that report, we mentioned that the central bank or the Russians had sold over $81 billion worth of U.S. treasuries over the last 2 months, but they did not sell the treasuries and then buy gold with it. The overall total amount of gold that Russia has, the 1,944 tons, only equals $78 billion. So what they added over the past couple of months is only a few $1 million worth of gold. They added about 15 and then 20. They added about 30 tons of gold, 35 tons of gold over the past couple of months. But they certainly did not sell the treasuries, take the $81 billion and go and buy $81 billion more worth of gold. They moved it into other assets. And then most recently, we covered what's up with the Rent Relief Act. That is a proposal by Kamala Harris, sponsored by, I think, Dianne Feinstein, both of California. And they are trying to get the federal government to give a tax credit to people who have paying over 30% of their income in rent. So we've done an analysis of that. Now let's see what happened in gold and silver. So 2 weeks ago, the last time we looked at gold and silver, gold had closed at 1254. It had been holding above the 1250 mark. And just last week on Friday, July 20th, it closed at 1231. Silver had managed to keep its head above $16 an ounce a couple of weeks ago. But over the last couple of weeks, it has fallen and it closed on Friday at 1551. The gold-silver ratio still heading higher. There you can see over the last month, it's gone from about 77 to 1 to about 79.80 to 1. My contention all along is the gold-silver ratio will not come down until the price of gold begins to move up significantly, and then silver starts to move up as well. And at some point, I believe silver, if there is a sustained rally in gold, silver will also sustain a rally and have a bigger one. But until then, I don't see the gold-silver ratio coming down. As you can see, over the past few weeks, even though both metals have gotten hit, gotten hammered, silver generally gets hammered a bit more, and that explains the increase in the gold-silver ratio. There's your 5-year gold-silver ratio. Now, why do I think that we might have bottomed here at the gold, silver, and the crypto prices? Well, there's a number of elements going on. These aren't predictions. These are just points to analyze. First of all, they've been down. The number one reason, they're back down to where they were almost at their lows, gold and silver, at the end of 2015. I think that the tariff situation can get out of control and create a lot of uncertainty. China has been having numerous amounts of defaults. The yuan is weakening and weakening against the dollar. This type of international tariff, trade war, currency war, whatever you want to call it, does have the potential to create uncertainty. And the dollar may not be the safe haven if indeed the dollar is at the center of the controversy. So that may give some underpinning to gold and silver for people in just about any country, including the United States, but particularly in China. If their currency is getting hammered, you may see increased gold demand there, India as well. And the same with the cryptocurrencies, because they're concerned about the devaluation of their currencies. All right. But still, remember how in 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18, we've been hearing gold-silver ratio is unsustainable. Silver is rarer than gold. It will reach a natural ratio of 16 to 1. Not happening, hasn't been happening. I think after 5 years, if you've been repeating that narrative, it may be time to re-examine it. Here's your 5-year gold-silver ratio. All right, let's take a look now. There's a lot of stories here. I'm going to blow by most of them. Most of them we have analyzed, at least partially, if not thoroughly, during the nightly live streams. But if you go to the blog post or the blog site at Smaulgld.com, you can pick up and read any of the particular stories that may interest you. The links are all there. All right, now mentioning the Fed, a couple of weeks ago, this is July 17th, Jerome Powell, Fed chair, mentioned that trade is the business of Congress. Now, he's accomplishing two things here. First of all, he's saying that the Fed really cannot conduct monetary policy to offset or to embellish or to support whatever trade policy there is, and that basically it's up to the Congress, which is a shot at Trump because Trump has been the one who's been conducting trade policy. But it does highlight that the Fed has been making noise in the minutes that is an uncertainty in the economy that they can't really model. Now remember, the Chinese, they run a very centrally planned economy. This has hit them for a loop. They were already recognizing that they had big issues that they had to address. They had a lot of debt. Their state-owned enterprises, state-owned banks had tremendous amounts of non-performing loans. The economy was slowing. They've got a monster debt situation over in China, but they had modeled out no tariffs, and that they were going to get a certain amount of revenue coming from the United States from trade, certain amount from all over the world. and then boom, the tariffs hit them, and the potential for them to be even more comes at exactly the worst time for them, when they're trying to deleverage, and they're trying also to move over to more of a service economy, and now they're going to not be able to have the revenue they expected coming from the United States. So China could be in a very difficult situation. They've already announced that they've had to subsidize and lower taxes for companies that do exports to the United States. And now it looks like they're allowing the yuan just to go further and further down against the US dollar. That's going to create trouble. There's going to be the United States calling them a currency manipulator. So I think that these are things that not only going to hurt China, but are probably going to hurt the United States. And these are the types of situations that you do get some boost to alternative assets like gold, silver, and perhaps cryptos. And probably for a while will help the U.S. stock market too. But the point being is that Powell is indicating that trade tariffs, they are an issue, and the Fed has to keep an eye on them. And I've been saying this is a case where the monetary policy has done its job according to the Fed. They're finished. They're not going to stimulate the economy anymore. That's why they've been raising rates for the past, basically since 2015. But in 2015, they raised them once. 2016, once at the end of the year. But since Trump has been president, they've tacked on 5 more rate hikes. And I think Trump is just starting to realize, hey, wait a minute there. You didn't raise them in 2015 when Obama was president, 14, 15. You waited till I became president, and now you're on this policy rate path. They're saying you're going to raise them 2 or 3 times more this year. And Powell did say in his testimony to Congress thinking about 3 more rate increases as the economy grows considerably. However, that can all come crashing down as a result of tariffs, or just in general, the rate hikes themselves, they kind of have a delayed effect. And if these rate hikes that have just not actually flowed through the economy yet may already have started to slow the economy down, you just don't know it, and then you're still raising rates 2 or 3 times more. And then we've seen this before, where the Fed is still raising rates, and in retrospect they were raising rates during a recession. So I think the Fed probably would be well advised to hold off, to do a wait, watch, listen, whatever it is. Just pay attention before they just continue on their rate hike path, especially since the rest of the central banks in the world are still at zero interest rates, negative interest rates, and are still doing quantitative easing of their own. I think the Fed has a decent spread between their interest rates and the rest of the central banks in the Western world and Japan. But Fed's outlook has been that years of strong jobs, low inflation is still ahead. However, that could all change pretty quickly. Now, during the week, or during the weeks, there was a Putin-Trump summit, and Trump got himself in a bit of trouble by appearing to side with Putin's view of the situation with Russian meddling in the 2016 election. I covered this before, but the one thing I want to say about it is I think what Trump is saying is he's granting that Russia may have meddled in the election, but he knows that if he says that right out and very clearly, that'll be interpreted as saying that he colluded with Russia in the interference. People are conflating on purpose, I believe, the two, the Russian meddling in the election and also Trump campaign collusion with Russia. And the point being is that in most of these cases, there are many foreign powers that are constantly interfering with the United States election, not just 2016, not just Russia, but in all prior elections. And the U.S. has admitted it does the same in others. But the real issue here is not so much that Russia interfered with the election. From my point of view, is that the potential that Trump colluded, or the administration, or not the administration, the campaign colluded with Putin. That's the big issue. And that issue is not clearly set on the table. They talk about them all combined. They conflate the two, Russian interference, because the investigation by Mueller is not into finding out was there interference in the election, and he's uncovering that, but it was definitely designed to see whether the Trump administration was involved, including with the Russians. That's what this whole FISA warrant controversy is about. All right. And of course, we've seen, and we're not going to cover this, but Brennan, Comey, former directors of the FBI, CIA, are all taking swipes at Trump, and this particular Putin-Trump summit they're saying was treasonous. Rand Paul came to his defense. Bernie Sanders was upset about this as well. Basically, anyone who's on the other side of the aisle is very, very opposed to what had happened at the Trump-Putin summit. So we're going to cover all of that right now. You probably heard enough of that all along, but plenty of indications of bias, well, not bias, but the animosity towards the summit to the point of calling it treason. And then they came up with this other story where there was this U.S. woman who was acting as a Russian agent, came out the same day, I think the day after the summit on the 17th, and then I just recently reported today that that person, that woman, was also meeting with, during the Obama administration, the Treasury Department, which doesn't make any sense, and also with the U.S. Federal Reserve. So I don't know how this woman got herself embedded, but the point was that this happened starting way back as 2015. So we're going to scroll through all these comments here on the press conference. There was a lot of, you can read Jeff Flake, you can read Chris Gagan, you can read James Comey, all the people who came out and basically said this was a, James Comey, a sellout of our nation on the international stage. Garry Kasparov, a chess player, said this was the darkest hour in American history. All right, so we're not going to go through all that. There's Comey again, Politico. All right. And then others came somewhat to Trump's defense. Sean Spicer. Trump came to his own defense. And I think that's it for that. All right. Now, the Supreme Court pick was a big issue when Trump came out with it, and there was a lot of hysteria that they weren't going to, Brett Kavanaugh, whoever was going to be picked, the Democrats were going to oppose. And it started out as you would imagine, when he was selected, that this was a big deal and they were going to stop Kavanaugh. That was 2 weeks ago. We haven't heard much in the past week. So there was a lot of talk about how this was the worst thing that could possibly happen to the judiciary, that this guy could get on the court. But that's died down. We'll probably, once the hearings start again, we'll start hearing all the hyperbole about how this is going to change America. And all right, and then we did hear from Lisa, this was 2 weeks ago, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, and it appears that the quick analysis is that Strzok defended himself and said that he didn't mean this, he didn't mean that, he wasn't biased, and the Republicans yelled at him and said, yes, you are. The Democrats defended Strzok, said stop badgering the witness. That was pretty much the gist of the Peter Strzok testimony. Apparently, though, Lisa Page gave some contradictory testimony, giving some credibility or undermining the credibility of some of Strzok's explanations. But having not seen those, they weren't televised. We're only getting that through the types of leaks. All right, now that whole thing, remember now this issue now with Mueller and Strzok and Page and Rosenstein, there's so much going on. The Republicans are trying to impeach Rosenstein for not giving over documents. Mueller has indicted 12 Russians. Carter Page is, the FISA memo was just released yesterday, and people are pouring through that to see what's going on, whether there's a narrative there. Both sides are claiming that the release of the report favors them. I haven't read it yet, but what I've read of the comments are, and I think they're both just grandstanding, because the thing is so heavily redacted. You see bits and pieces of stuff. There's something in there for everyone to say, yes, this FISA application was properly filed and it made sense to file it, and no, it didn't. It was only based on the dossier. I don't have an opinion on that yet, but people already, I don't think anyone really is going to change their minds. I think at this point, no one's interested in finding out what happened. They're interested in finding pieces in that FISA warrant that'll prove whatever side they're on is right. Unfortunately, but that's going to lead to, I also think, to a lot of turmoil, because as the Trump people dig in and the other side digs in, you get that type of turmoil. And then if you add to that the economic turmoil that might come, again, this all ties back to the gold and silver prices, is that turmoil is never good. Markets don't like uncertainty. They generally move to gold and silver during periods of political and economic uncertainty, and we pretty much have both of those on the horizon. All right. And there's the 12 Russians that were indicted just before Trump met with Putin. And of course, they're going after Rosenstein too. So there may be issues within the investigation itself. If somehow Rosenstein gets impeached, we're going to have issues. The other thing you're going to have to consider for uncertainty is what happens in the midterm elections in November. I would think that no matter what happens, there'll be turmoil. If the Republicans retain both the House and the Senate, you're going to see the, quote, resistance be even further inflamed and infuriated. If the Democrats win the Congress but not the Senate, you are going to see more partisanship. If they manage to take over both, well, then it's going to be all hell breaks loose, because now you're going to have Congress and the Senate trying to impeach Trump, pass bills that he's not going to sign, and you're going to see a lot of divisiveness. So no matter what happens, I think we have that in store coming up in November. All right, there's Lisa Page, there's Rosenstein. We're going to go through all this. Now, also that was covered, and everybody forgot this already, but Trump went to NATO and told them they had to pay up, and it wasn't fair that the United States pays this money. And then he took a swipe at Germany and said, by the way, they don't pay as much as they should, and they're doing a deal with Putin for natural gas. They could be buying that from us. Why do they have a special deal with Putin? And then later in the week, he said something about Europe being a foe. So a lot happening here. You've got what appears to be, and not necessarily is the case, but an undermining of the NATO alliance. You've got issues with this FISA warrant issue. There's just a lot of things going on that are not business as usual. So I guess Trump was pushing the German-Russian collusion angle, and he thought that would make him look good. So it's not me that colludes with the Russians. It's Germany, and they're buying oil from Germany, and he's saying, look, I'll interfere with that deal. I'm not for Russia. I'm for the United States, and I'll sell you oil, but you're not even paying your fair share in NATO. That didn't go over well with the European allies and also people at home. Also, Jean-Claude Juncker was staggering around at the NATO summit. Some say he might have been inebriated. And then there was, people forgot this. This is what's interesting when you do a 2-week review. I forgot about this. Trump attacks London mayor over terrible. He's done a terrible job. Then they had that balloon over London. There he is, the baby diaper. So again, you have not only Trump having issues with NATO, he's calling out the mayor of London. The mayor of London's calling him out back. And then there's issues in England, whether they're going to do Brexit or not. And then Trump gave an interview saying that that Brexit, the way it's going, is not what the British people signed up for, and that Theresa May should just tell the European Union to go pound sand. And again, it looks like Trump is interfering in the English, and he said Boris Johnson, the politics, and Boris Johnson would be a good prime minister. There it is. Trump says Brits aren't getting the Brexit they voted for from Theresa May. There they are, apparently made up and giving a press conference. And then Trump constantly is calling out what he calls the fake news. Here he is. Jim Acosta tries to ask a question at the May Trump press conference, and he says, I don't take questions from CNN. CNN is fake news. All right. And then the Eurocrats are complaining about Trump. Trump said the EU was designed to screw the United States. I think he said that. I forgot. He was at some rally. And then some European bureaucrat, who I think he's second to Juncker, the European president, said that the European Union started to work on a monetary union that led to the euro because Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard in 1971. That was 20 years later that they actually did the monetary union, so I'm not sure that was the case either. Both have their own selective views of history. And there's Juncker. Look like he's not standing straight there either. All right, let's see what else we got here. A lot of stuff. There's Juncker again. President of the EU. Yeah, Germany saying we can no longer fully rely on the United States. All right, let's get into now more economics. One of the things I've been saying for the longest time, this idea the petrodollar is dying, petro yuan is going to be the big thing. And the idea of the petrodollar is that the United States worked out an arrangement with Saudi Arabia where they would price their oil only in dollars and only sell it in oil, and thereby creating a demand for dollars that would otherwise not exist after Nixon went off the gold standard in 1971 because the dollar wasn't backed by gold. Then why have it? Well, if you had to have it to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, and that's where most of the countries are getting the bulk of their oil from at the time, well, that created the petrodollar, and people, or central banks, continued to use dollars. But since then, a lot has changed. Countries have gotten used to holding dollars as reserves. It's pretty much it is the largest held currency or treasury offering in the world for central banks. Has been, and it's not just because they want to buy oil, but even putting that aside, the idea that Saudi Arabia is no longer the world's largest exporter. The United States is going to be that soon. Russia's a large exporter of oil. And the idea that if you need oil to back the dollar, well, the U.S., you're going to need to have dollars to buy oil from the United States, given that the United States is not only the top oil producer and soon to be the top oil exporter, but also a major natural gas exporter, exporting a lot of natural gas to China, which they just put tariffs on. But the point being is that the idea that Saudi Arabia is so important that if they were to give up and start to accept other currencies for their oil, that would be the end of the petrodollar, the end of the dollar, game over, game changer. Chinese yuan would be end dollar hegemony, and it would be ascendant. It's all nonsense because, first of all, Saudi Arabia has not given up. So now the dollar is backed by both Saudi oil and U.S. oil, but it's not just that. The dollar and the treasury bonds are very much what central banks now hold as reserves. All right, let's see what else we had. Well, Russia did sell off its treasuries. They got $14 billion left, and that just shows how deep the market is for U.S. treasuries. I've mentioned on other broadcasts that Apple has $50 billion in treasuries, far more than Russia has. Google has like $45 billion, Facebook $13 billion. I think all combined they have like $110 billion, just U.S. large companies. Yeah, Russia falls off the list of major holders U.S. treasuries. And I wrote, and the sun still comes up in the morning. And China's in no position to start dumping treasuries right now. They have 1.1 trillion of them. All right, what else is happening with China? Now, China is trying to raise tariffs. The problem with China raising tariffs on U.S. goods for it is that the goods that China buys from the United States are essential. It's buying food, or was soybeans, natural gas, fiber optic problem, stuff that they don't have enough of, so they have to buy from the U.S., or they're going to have to find oil somewhere else, like from Iran. Soybeans, they're going to have to find that from somewhere else. So China really can't go tit for tat, and the reason is that their exports are 5 times the size of the U.S. exports. So they really, if they want to go tit for tat, they're going to have to put tariffs on stuff that they probably really need. Whereas the United States has somewhat of an advantage in that a lot of the stuff that the United States has are discretionary items, and it's not going to be good for inflation, and Americans will feel the pinch. But it's not like it's food that they have to have, or oil that they have to have, or natural gas that they have to have. And this is a couple of weeks ago, saying Trump administration announced a list of tariffs on $200 billion in Chinese goods, and now they're talking about $500 billion. This is all uncharted territory, uncertainty. I don't think people think this is going to blow over. Don't think so. It's going to create imbalances in how world trade is conducted, how currencies shake out. I think it's going to be a very big deal, and it's hard to predict where it will fall, and that's when you generally get the uncertainty, and then people would, I think, would, to a certain extent, not necessarily everybody, would move into precious metals and or cryptocurrencies, or both. See, China's complaining to the World Trade Organization against the tariffs on Chinese goods. This is tension. Here it is now. Trump says he's ready to put tariffs on $505 billion of Chinese goods imported into the United States. And China now, as I mentioned, they're really having their own issues right now. China to reimburse tariffs for state reserve. Here, China's going to have to reimburse the buyer for the cost of 25% tariffs on soybean imports. So the Chinese government has to bail out its own companies. And all this stuff, multipolar world, game over, game changer, China to crush the dollar. It's the exact opposite. And the idea that somehow the gold was going to rise because of the gold back yuan, petro yuan, end of the dollar hegemony, nonsense. The reason gold might rise is that China might collapse. And that's a very real possibility that a lot of the gold bugs never consider. They've always been praising China as if it's somehow the United States is just full of debt, doesn't make anything, and that China is this perfect industrialized country. And China has massive amounts of debt and many internal issues. So this tariff situation may be exacerbating the issue that they thought they were going to centrally plan their way out of. They may not be able to do that. They just had a deficit for the first time since 1993. Lots of issues here. Now, industry moving from China to India. Samsung opens world's largest phone factory in India. We talked about this in the context of Indian silver demand. They're going to need more silver to produce these phones for Samsung. Yep, forget gold, back yuan, multipolar world, China to crush the dollar, and other fantastical gold pumping narratives. Here it says, China, like the EU, artificially boosted its economy to give the citizens a perception of wealth through purchasing power. Its political leaders use central banks as a tool for this, says Live Monitor. However, this is a systemic risk and a bigger political risk when things begin to unravel. Pretty much what I've been saying for the last couple of years, and I think that's coming true now. Chinese shares have dropped. The Shanghai Gold Exchange is down 30% over the last couple of months. The yuan had its worst month ever in June, and it's not getting any better in July. And they're pumping money into the economy and seeing what they can do about it, but it may be too late already. And again, that would be good for the... And the GDP is slowing down. You can see that here. Slowest growth since 1995. China needs to grow. If it starts to slow down, it's game over, as they say, or game changer. Gold back yuan, multipolar world, reset, China to control the gold price, all that stuff that we may get higher in gold prices, silver prices, but not because China's ascendancy. It could be because of China's collapse. SDRs, they become global currency. All this stuff we hear. Multipolar world, end of dollar hegemony. Futures flat as dollar surges, continues, Chinese yuan tumbles. Yeah. All right, that's enough on China. I think we're going to cut it short here. There's a lot going on in the crypto space. We mentioned the banks, that Litecoin is with token pay working on to take over German bank, and then the Maltese government and Binance working on a much larger bank to be a crypto bank out of Malta. And so there's also some favorable regulation that's going on in the countries. So it could be, I think also what's pulling the cryptos down was they rose up on pure speculative furor and mania. And what then happened was people started wondering what's going to happen to these. Are they going to be regulated out of existence? Are they going to be banned? And what I've seen the last 3 or 4 months is clearly a move towards regulating, moving all of these assets onto regulated exchanges, getting banks in, getting institutional investors comfortable with investing, probably approving an ETF in the United States, and getting companies that want to do initial coin offerings, ICOs, to register them with the SEC. And if you don't, they're going to go after the ones that aren't registered. They're going to go after the people money laundering. They're going to go after the people who aren't paying taxes. But for the most part, I think they want to capture the innovation. They want to capture the upside that Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and all the other big money people can make by corralling these cryptocurrencies. And that's what it appears to me what's happening. And as the regulatory environment becomes clearer, see, people don't like the uncertainty of that. As it becomes clearer, I think more money will come in and they'll go higher. Yeah, not investment advice on gold, silver, or cryptos. It's just what I'm seeing here in the space. That gold and silver benefit from the uncertainty as safe havens. And actually, cryptos don't do well with uncertainty because people don't know what's going to happen to them, whether they're going to go away. But if the more they get comfortable that they are just going to be regulated, I think more money will come in. And I just saw today that Coinbase has its own political action committee. And I mentioned the other day that the Winklevoss twins donated $110 million or some ridiculous amount to Governor Cuomo. And then voila, they got a bit license in New York. So there's a lot of money that can lobby politicians to make sure that they're not hostile to these investments that people have in cryptocurrencies. And there's some Litecoin news, there's some Bitcoin news. We're not going to go through it all, but you can scroll through it if you not want to get caught up on the gold, silver, and crypto news here. There's plenty of it. I can't go through it all, but the links are all there. Next week we'll try to do the recap for just 1 week, so we don't have to scroll by a lot of stories. Thank you for joining me, and also join me each and every evening at 8 o'clock where we do a live stream on the topic of the day. If you like this broadcast, please consider donating to Smaulgld via Patreon. You can do so below this YouTube or BitChute, or also on the Smaulgld site. You can donate a small amount or a large amount. If you join the Mug Club, the Smaulgld Club, for $25 a month, you get a free Smaulgld, this mug right here, classic mug. If you join for $50 a month, you're going to get both mugs, the super classic and the classic mugs. Also, you can donate smaller amounts, $5 a month, $2 a month, or whatever you'd like. Any donation is appreciated. And also, you can consider buying your precious metals through Smaulgld at SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, and Golden Eagle Coins. You can compare pricing and shipping at those sites. And if you do make a purchase, again, non-investment advice to buy gold, silver, or platinum or palladium from those sites. But if you do buy from those sites, from those links, you pay no more, no less than if you visited them directly. And Smaulgld gets a small commission. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you this evening at 8.